When we delve into the sacred scriptures, we often encounter the compelling stories of Cain and Abel. But why do we so rarely turn to the stories of Adam and Eve's daughters? This silence around their lives not only arouses curiosity, but also raises questions about the breadth and depth of our understanding of biblical narratives. The omission of their stories, long relegated to footnotes in tradition and scholarly research, signals a vast and virtually unexplored field for historians, theologians, and laypeople interested in the fullness of the human experience as documented in the scriptures. The Bible, in Genesis 5:4, informs us that, after Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. This verse clearly establishes the existence of multiple daughters of Adam and Eve, yet we rarely move beyond this passage, leaving a vacuum of information about who these women were, their names, their stories, and their impacts on subsequent generations. The Judeo-Christian tradition, though rich in detail about many aspects of the patriarchs' lives, maintains an almost absolute silence on these female figures. Within traditions and apocryphal texts, we find some mentions that offer glimpses of these forgotten figures. The Book of Jubilees, for example, a pseudepigraphal text from the 2nd century BC, provides some of the few names and additional details. According to this text, Adam and Eve had several daughters, including Awan and Azura, who played crucial roles by marrying their brothers Cain and Seth, respectively. These unions are mentioned with the purpose of explaining the continuation of the human lineage, but are rarely discussed beyond the genealogical necessity. The scarcity of details about these women in mainstream narratives raises important questions about family, social, and cultural dynamics of humanity's earliest generations. Historian and theologian Elisheva Baumgarten suggests that the silence about Adam and Eve's daughters in biblical texts reflects a broader view of women in antiquity, often seen but rarely heard. This perspective invites us to look beyond the text, to imagine the lives, influences, and legacies of these forgotten women. Although the scriptures provide few details, the importance of recognizing and exploring the stories of Adam and Eve's daughters lies in the more complete understanding of humanity they offer. They were daughters, wives, mothers, and undoubtedly influencers within their communities. Their stories, though unrecorded, are an integral part of the tapestry of human history. The call to explore the lives of these women goes beyond academic curiosity. It is about recognizing the presence and contribution of women in the foundational narratives that have shaped societies. By doing so, we not only enrich our understanding of the scriptures, but also honor the countless untold stories that lie beneath the surface of ancient texts, awaiting discovery and recognition. The journey to uncover the forgotten history of Adam and Eve's daughters is an invitation to look more deeply into our origins, recognizing the complexity and richness of the human experience from its beginnings. As the Book of Jubilees stands as a key piece in understanding biblical narratives, enriching our knowledge about creation and the first human generations with details not found in canonical texts, this ancient Jewish writing, also known as Little Genesis, retells stories from Genesis and Exodus, expanding them with additional information and specific interpretations, placing events within a calendar based on jubilees of 49 years. The Book of Jubilees is valued by scholars and theologians for providing a detailed look at the cosmology, law, and society of early Jewish communities. According to James C. Vanderkam, an expert in Second Temple literature, the Book of Jubilees offers a fascinating account of how an ancient author interpreted the history of Israel from creation to the Exodus, with the aim of emphasizing the observance of the Sabbath, festivals, and other Jewish practices. Vanderkam, 1995. This perspective highlights how the text not only complements biblical narratives, but also serves as a commentary on the religious practices and beliefs of the time. One of the most significant contributions of the Book of Jubilees is its detailed narrative about creation and the early patriarchs, including information about the patriarchs' ages at death and details about their families not mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. For example, it provides names for Noah's wife and his sons' wives, a feature that reflects its interest in genealogies and in establishing a sacred continuity through generations. Additionally, the Book of Jubilees emphasizes the sanctity of Mount Sinai and the revelation of the law to Moses, presenting a divine chronology that maps the history of Israel within a framework of Jubilees, emphasizing predestination and God's sovereignty over human history. This approach not only reaffirms the importance of commandments and Jewish festivals, but also seeks to directly link the religious practices of the author's time to the divine revelation at Sinai. As we explore the sacred scriptures, we often encounter the poignant stories of Cain and Abel. But why do we so rarely turn to the stories of Adam and Eve's daughters? This silence around their lives not only sparks curiosity, but also raises questions about the breadth and depth of our understanding of biblical narratives. The omission of their stories, for a long time relegated to footnotes in tradition and scholarly research, signals a vast and virtually unexplored field for historians, theologians, and lay people interested in the entirety of the human experience as documented in the scriptures. The Bible, in Genesis 5:4, informs us that after Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. This verse clearly establishes the existence of multiple daughters of Adam and Eve, yet we rarely move beyond this passage, leaving a vacuum of information about who these women were, their names, their stories, and their impacts on subsequent generations. The Judeo-Christian tradition, although rich in details about many aspects of the lives of the patriarchs, maintains almost absolute silence on these female figures. Within traditions and apocryphal texts, we find some mentions that offer glimpses of these forgotten figures. The Book of Jubilees, for example, a pseudepigraphal text from the 2nd century BC, provides some of the few names and additional details. According to this text, Adam and Eve had several daughters, including Awan and Azura, who played crucial roles by marrying their brothers, Cain and Seth, respectively. These unions are mentioned with the purpose of explaining the continuation of the human lineage, but are rarely discussed beyond the genealogical necessity. The scarcity of details about these women in mainstream narratives raises important questions about the family, social, and cultural dynamics of humanity's earliest generations. Historian and theologian Elisheva Baumgarten suggests that the silence about Adam and Eve's daughters in biblical texts reflects a broader view of women in antiquity, often seen but rarely heard. This perspective is an invitation to look beyond the text, to imagine the lives, influences, and legacies of these forgotten women. Although the scriptures provide few details, the importance of recognizing and exploring the stories of Adam and Eve's daughters lies in the more complete understanding of humanity they offer. They were daughters, wives, mothers, and undoubtedly influencers within their communities. Their stories, though unrecorded, are an integral part of the tapestry of human history. The call to explore the lives of these women goes beyond academic curiosity. It is about recognizing the presence and contribution of women in the foundational narratives that have shaped societies. By doing so, we not only enrich our understanding of the scriptures, but also honor the countless untold stories that lie beneath the surface of ancient texts, awaiting discovery and recognition. The journey to uncover the forgotten history of Adam and Eve's daughters is an invitation to look more deeply into our origins, recognizing the complexity and richness of the human experience from its beginnings. Studying the Book of Jubilees, therefore, not only enriches our understanding of biblical narratives, but also provides valuable insights into the theology, ethics, and liturgical practices of Jewish communities in the Second Temple period. It serves as a reminder of the complexity and depth of Jewish religious tradition, as well as the constant interpretation and reinterpretation of sacred scriptures over time. Exploring this and other ancient texts continues to uncover layers of meaning and connections that deepen our understanding of the past and influence our interpretation of the present. Why is the diversity of ancient Jewish traditions and other texts crucial to unveiling the names and roles of Adam and Eve's daughters, characters often overlooked in biblical narratives? By delving into sources such as the Book of Jubilees and traditions beyond the biblical canon, we have the opportunity to enrich our understanding of these forgotten figures and recognize the depth of their contributions to human history. The Book of Jubilees, for example, presents a detailed narrative about the first human generations, complementing Genesis with additional information on dates, laws, and genealogies. It is particularly valuable for providing names and contexts for characters briefly mentioned or unnamed in the Hebrew Bible. This text acts as a link between sacred scriptures and Jewish oral tradition, preserving aspects of culture and religion that may have been marginalized or forgotten over time. Adam and Eve's daughters, for instance, gain prominence in the Book of Jubilees, which mentions their contributions and family relations, offering a more complete view of family dynamics in the earliest creation stories. While the Hebrew Bible briefly mentions that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters, Genesis 5:4, it is through texts like the Book of Jubilees that we begin to understand the significance of these other lives in the tapestry of human history. Moreover, traditions outside the biblical canon, such as pseudepigraphal and apocryphal writings, play a crucial role in preserving alternative stories and perspectives on biblical figures. These texts offer insights into the diversity of beliefs and practices within ancient Jewish communities, highlighting the complexity of interpreting and transmitting sacred stories. Exploring the diversity of these traditions allows us to recognize the richness of the Jewish cultural and religious heritage and appreciate the multifaceted nature of the biblical tradition. In doing so, we not only honor the memory of Adam and Eve's daughters, but also value the importance of all voices in the sacred narratives, many of which offer unique perspectives on fundamental events in human history. Therefore, studying ancient Jewish traditions and other Bible-related texts is essential for a more comprehensive and nuanced understanding of humanity's origins, enabling us to uncover untold stories and recognize the integral role of women in the creation narratives. For instance, the Book of Jubilees, a rich source of genealogies and details on the earliest generations, may not mention Awan or Kalima directly by name, but it provides a detailed framework of family life, alliances, and relations among Adam and Eve's descendants. This text, by recounting events from Genesis with additional information, offers a valuable perspective on the importance of women in the narratives of origins, even when their names and stories are preserved in a fragmented manner. The discussion about Awan, or Kalima, leads us to reflect on the nuances of oral and written traditions that developed around biblical stories. By exploring these sources, we recognize the complexity of transmitting cultural and religious knowledge across generations. Studying the variations in the names and stories of these characters allows us to appreciate the rich tapestry of interpretations and meanings that make up the Judeo-Christian tradition. Therefore, Awan, or Kalima, represents the intersection of history, faith, and culture that characterizes the study of biblical traditions. By recognizing and exploring the diversity of these traditions, we can achieve a deeper and more nuanced understanding of humanity's origins and the role of women in that process. What is the story of Azura, and how did her relationship with Seth shape the continuity of the human lineage after the tragic death of Abel, according to biblical narratives and ancient traditions? Azura, less known in the canonical scriptures, emerges in ancient Jewish traditions and apocryphal texts as a central figure in the perpetuation of humanity, offering a rich perspective on the role of women in the earliest generations. Azura, identified in some apocryphal texts as the wife and sister of Seth, is crucial for understanding the narrative of human succession after the first act of violence that haunted creation. In Genesis 4:25, it is mentioned that Adam and Eve had a son named Seth, who was seen as a God-given replacement after Abel's death. Adam lay with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." This verse, though not directly mentioning Azura, is a starting point for deeper explorations into the human lineage that followed. Within traditions and texts outside the biblical canon, the figure of Azura gains more defined contours. The Book of Jubilees, for example, provides genealogical and chronological details that enrich the story of the earliest human families. Through these texts, Azura is recognized not just as part of Adam's family, but also as an essential contributor to the continuity of the human lineage, especially concerning Seth's line, from which key biblical figures culminating in Noah are descended. Azura and Seth represent hope for renewal and continuity after mourning and loss. Through their union, the biblical narrative emphasizes life's resilience and humanity's capacity to persevere and flourish even amid adversity. This story highlights the importance of family relations and loyalty to a greater purpose, which is the preservation and growth of human life on Earth. Exploring the story of Azura allows us to recognize the richness of biblical narratives and the traditions surrounding them. By shedding light on these lesser-known characters, we expand our understanding of the family, social, and spiritual dynamics that shaped humanity's earliest generations. Azura, as part of this tapestry, underscores the vital role of women in origin stories and the perpetuation of faith and culture through the ages. Thus, Azura's story, intertwined with Seth's, not only provides insights into the biblical past, but also inspires us to reflect on the universal themes of love, loss, hope, and continuity that pervade the human experience. Recognizing Azura's contribution to the human lineage reminds us of the strength and resilience that characterize the human journey from its beginnings. As we delve into sacred scriptures, we often come across the striking stories of Cain and Abel. Yet why do we seldom turn our attention to the tales of Adam and Eve's daughters? This silence surrounding their lives not only sparks curiosity, but also raises questions about the scope and depth of our understanding of biblical narratives. The Bible tells us Adam lived 930 years, fathering sons and daughters throughout his life. Genesis 5:4-5. This extraordinary reproductive capacity and longevity provide a fascinating perspective on life in the earliest chapters of human history, contrasting sharply with our current understanding of human reproduction. The biblical mention of Adam and Eve's extensive progeny not only underscores the importance of fertility in the creation narrative, but also reflects a world where generations significantly overlapped, creating a complex web of family and social relationships. Adam lived 130 years and fathered a son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. The days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. Genesis 5:3-4. This verse specifically highlights not just Adam's longevity, but also his ongoing ability to generate life, aspects that are lost in modern understanding of human biology. Comparatively, the modern record for human fertility is held by Valentina Vasilyev, an 18th century Russian peasant who had 69 children in 27 confinements. While this number is extraordinary by today's standards, it falls short of the reproductive potential attributed to Adam and Eve, considering the length of their lives as depicted in the scriptures. This contrast not only highlights differences between ancient and modern realities, but also invites us to ponder the living conditions, health, and culture in the earliest human societies. Analyzing the fertility of Adam and Eve leads us to contemplate the biblical representation of human life at its origins, marked by an intimate connection with the divine and an almost unimaginable capacity for procreation and survival. At the same time, it offers an opportunity to explore how these stories inform our current understandings of family, faith, and the miracle of life. Therefore, the extensive offspring of Adam and Eve, when viewed through the lens of biblical narratives and compared with modern fertility records, not only underscores the uniqueness of the earliest human generations, but also highlights humanity's evolution in terms of longevity, health, and family structures. This legacy of fertility, recorded in the scriptures, continues to fascinate and inspire, offering a glimpse into a time when human life and its perpetuation were central to the divine plan. What was the impact of Adam and Eve's remarkable fertility on the initial human population, and how does this reproductive prowess compare to the fertility records we know today? The biblical narrative in Genesis 5:4-5 informs us that after Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Adam lived 930 years and then he died. This passage highlights the extraordinary reproductive capability of Adam and Eve, suggesting a numerous progeny that laid the foundation for the initial human population. Adam and Eve's extensive offspring represent not just a biological feat, but also a fundamental pillar in the construction of the earliest human societies. This ability to continuously generate life over hundreds of years created a complex network of overlapping generations, deeply shaping the social structure, family relationships, and the transfer of knowledge and culture in primitive communities. Comparatively, modern fertility records, as previously mentioned, are exemplified by Valentina Vasilyev, who had 69 children across 27 pregnancies. Though this record is impressive, it pales in comparison to the scale of reproduction suggested for Adam and Eve. The discrepancy between these records and the biblical narrative highlights not only the contemporary human biological limitations, but also the evolution of social norms, medicine, and life expectancy over time. Adam and Eve's contribution to humanity extends beyond their immediate offspring. By establishing the first human lineage, they laid the foundations for the development of the earliest civilizations, indirectly influencing the cultural, ethnic, and genetic diversity of the global population. This legacy of fertility, so central to the biblical creation narrative, offers a unique perspective on human resilience and adaptability. Reflecting on Adam and Eve's fertility in light of contemporary knowledge invites us to consider not only the biological and social changes that have influenced human reproduction, but also to recognize the profound impact the first humans had on shaping the world we live in today. This reflection allows us to appreciate the continuity of human life through the ages, seeing Adam and Eve's offspring as the beginning of a collective journey that continues to unfold today. Therefore, the story of Adam and Eve's fertility, though rooted in an ancient context and interpreted through religious and cultural lenses, still resonates with contemporary issues about human nature, family, and society. This legacy reminds us of our shared connection to the past and our ongoing responsibility to nurture and preserve the chain of life for future generations. How have Adam and Eve's ethnic origins and the subsequent initial intermingling shaped humanity's ethnic diversity, as reflected in biblical narratives and scientific evidence? The Bible mentions in Genesis 1:27 that God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God He created them, male and female He created them, establishing Adam and Eve as the progenitors of humanity. This verse not only highlights humanity's unity, created in God's image, but also suggests a common starting point for all ethnicities and cultures. Humanity's ethnic diversity, a defining characteristic of our species, raises intriguing questions about how, from two individuals, so many ethnic and cultural variations emerged. The biblical narrative in Genesis provides a framework for understanding this diversification, notably through the story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11:1-9, where the dispersion and diversification of languages led to the formation of different nations and ethnic groups. Although this account focuses more on linguistic and geographical diversity, it can be interpreted as a symbolic moment reflecting the origin of ethnic diversity. From a scientific perspective, modern genetic studies have provided insights into how humanity diversified from a small group of ancestors. The concept of a mitochondrial Eve, the common genetic mother of all living humans today, identified through the analysis of mitochondrial DNA, echoes the biblical idea of a common human origin. This woman, who lived in Africa about 150,000 to 200,000 years ago, was not the only woman alive at the time, but her lineage is the only one that survived to all current humans, offering a scientific basis for the notion of common ancestry. The interplay between biblical narratives and scientific discoveries challenges us to consider how humanity's ethnic diversity developed in a context of interconnectedness and interdependence. The stories of Adam and Eve and the subsequent dispersal of their descendants provide a theological framework for human unity and diversity, while advances in genetics and anthropology offer a complementary view, highlighting the complexity and richness of human evolution. Therefore, reflecting on the ethnic origins of Adam and Eve and humanity's diversification invites us to recognize both the fundamental unity and the glorious diversity that characterize the human family. This understanding, rooted in both faith and science, reinforces the idea that, despite the myriad ethnic and cultural differences, we all share a common heritage that unites us. Genetic research has introduced the concept of mitochondrial Eve, a woman through whom we can trace the maternal lineage of almost all living humans today, existing approximately between 100,000 to 200,000 years ago. This concept deeply resonates with the biblical account found in Acts 17:26, where it is mentioned that, "From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth." The idea of a mitochondrial Eve does not imply she was the only woman alive at her time, but that the mitochondrial lineages of all other women eventually became extinct, leaving her as the sole direct maternal ancestor of all living humans today. This scientific discovery offers a fascinating perspective on how human diversity evolved from a common origin, a notion paralleled in the sacred scriptures that speak of a unified human creation. The study of mitochondrial DNA has provided a unique window into the past, allowing scientists to trace human migration, diversification, and evolution across millennia. These genetic researches not only validate the interconnectedness among all humans, but also enrich our understanding of the complexity of human life and our shared heritage. By exploring the relationship between genetic findings and biblical narratives, we are invited to reflect on humanity's fundamental unity, a message that transcends cultural, ethnic, and temporal boundaries. The story of mitochondrial Eve expands the biblical view of a common origin, highlighting the wonderful diversity of creation within a framework of unity. This intertwining of science and faith provides us with a richer, more multifaceted understanding of who we are and where we come from. Recognizing both our common ancestry and the inherent diversity within the human species, we can appreciate the beauty of creation in all its complexity. Research on mitochondrial Eve not only reinforces the connection between biblical narratives and genetic discoveries, but also celebrates the interconnected tapestry of human life, emphasizing our shared responsibility to care for one another and the world we inhabit. Thus, the dialogue between sacred texts and modern science invites us to a deeper appreciation of human unity, inspiring a renewed sense of connection and solidarity among all peoples, regardless of the differences that may exist between us. How do our journeys through ancient narratives and scientific discoveries transform our understanding of humanity's origin and diversity? Throughout this exploration, we delved into the stories of Adam and Eve's forgotten daughters, uncovering the roles of Awan and Azura in the tapestry of human creation. We revealed the extraordinary fertility of Adam and Eve, contrasting it with modern records to highlight the evolution of human life from its deepest roots. Our journey has also led us to a meeting point between science and faith, where the study of mitochondrial Eve has reinforced the idea of a common ancestry, providing a remarkable link between biblical narratives and genetic evidence of humanity's fundamental unity. This dialogue between the past and present invites us to reflect on our own identity and the connections we share, not just among ourselves, but with the generations that preceded us. Each discovery and story brought to light on this journey not only expands our knowledge, but also enriches our appreciation for the diversity and complexity of the human experience. Through these explorations, we are reminded of the intrinsic beauty of creation, the interconnectedness of all lives, and the importance of recognizing and valuing every voice within the grand narrative of humanity. Thus, we conclude not with an end, but with a continuous invitation to curiosity, learning, and empathy. May ancient stories and modern discoveries continue to inspire our collective journey, encouraging us to look more deeply into our shared past and build a future where the richness of our diversity is celebrated as our greatest strength. Did you like the video? Leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on our content.